What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, the JoyCon drift madness was all over the place. The media actually started really hammering on it, and it seems like there's some serious push to get Nintendo to have some kind of response. We're going to talk a bit about that today. And then, of course, Capcom. Well, Capcom's being Capcom, as I like to say, and they're trying to pull a fast one, it looks like, especially on people who already purchased Resident Evil 4, like myself. We'll talk a bit about that as well. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Make sure you hit the like button. It does help out. And make sure you're subscribed as well if you want to keep up to date on all the gaming news going on. We do this every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, to keep you up to speed on everything going on. We're actually going to start today with the Tetris Effect. It's a game that I actually liked a lot on the PlayStation 4, specifically in VR with the PlayStation VR. It's a really, really cool game to check out. And it looks like now, if you mostly play on PC and you have a nice VR setup there with like an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive, you'll be able to now play this game starting July 23rd. One catch, though, it is an Epic Game Store exclusive. I know that's not going to sit great with a lot of people, but Epic's out there trying to compete, and this is obviously the route they've chosen, but it is at least coming to PC. We'll see if there's any kind of like exclusivity length or deal there so that eventually it shows up on Steam or other places. Now, it is going to have some extra benefits. Of course, you'll have 4K resolution. They said this is actually going to be kind of like the Ultimate Edition. It's going to have 4K resolution, uncapped frame rates, support for ultra-wide monitors, and then a bunch of other expanded game and graphical options. So good stuff there. Awesome game, especially if you like Tetris and you want a different look at it. Next up, let's talk about some new games coming to Game Pass on the Xbox. Now, I talked previously about how we had some games coming like during the first half of July, and then we'd probably have more games showing up towards the back half of July. Well, they just announced a bunch more games, and some of them look pretty good. Now, you may have already played a few of these, and we're technically going to talk about one of these games on another platform today on the Switch, but let's take a look. We actually had this nice image here put out on their website where you can see the different games there, and we have dates for them as well. July 17th, Nightcall. So today, Nightcall will be out on Xbox Game Pass PC and Game Pass Ultimate. And then you have Metal Gear Solid 5, which I actually liked Metal Gear Solid 5. I know it had some weird issues towards the end, but I still liked that game a lot. It was still very fun. Xbox Game Pass for console, which of course also done through Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Then we have the Banner Saga 3 coming out that same day. Then July 25th, For the King, Killer Instinct, and then Resident Evil 4, which is the one we'll also talk about a little later on the Switch. But good little lineup there for the back half. If you've not played Metal Gear Solid 5, it's actually pretty good on the Xbox One X, for example, and I do like it. It's different than other Metal Gear Solid games, although I guess if you do something like Peace Walker, I guess it's similar to that, for example, so it's not too different, I guess, but I really liked it. It's very obvious that something happened at Konami towards the end of the game. You can see where they kind of speed up and everything, but still a very fun game. And if you already have Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate or Xbox Live Ultimate, you can just download it and try it out, and I recommend you do that. Otherwise, though, look towards things like Killer Instinct and, of course, the classic Resident Evil 4. Oh, and a quick heads up, Final Fantasy VIII Remastered has now been rated by the ESRB, and you may expect that, right? They have to rate it, obviously. But generally, if something like that gets rated, that means they're just about ready to release it. Now, I don't think they're going to do a shadow drop. I think on Twitter in the next week or so, they'll just put a release date out, and then we'll just kind of count down towards that day. But exciting stuff. Now, the ESRB rating just shows the Xbox and the Windows release, but of course, we already know it's coming to the PlayStation 4, the Switch, the Xbox, and the PC. So we know it's pretty much coming to everything. We're just wondering when exactly. Well, again, seeing this ESRB rating probably means we're not going to have to wait at least too much longer to find out when it's coming out, and to be honest, I think we're going to find out like a couple weeks before it's ready to go. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're going to start with Capcom being Capcom and releasing Resident Evil 5 and 6, although we kind of expected that because they already told us that on the Switch. It's actually coming out right at the end of October 29th, but here's the interesting thing. They're going to do something very odd in North America. They are going to release Resident Evil 4 on a cartridge, which is something a lot of us wanted. We looked at Resident Evil 4 being $30 on the Switch, and we saw that as, pretty much all of us did, as too much money compared to other versions of the game, of course, being $20 and physical for $20. But I think some of us said, you know what? If you had it physically with how cart costs are, some people would say, you know what? I'll get it physically and I'll be okay. It's still too expensive, I think, but to have it physically is really cool on a cartridge. But they never did that, at least not until now. So we do know 5 and 6, they are coming. Apparently they're going to be $29.99 right at the end of October. And then for North America, there will be a physical release of the games, kind of. There's going to be Resident Evil 4 on a cartridge. It's called the Triple Pack. And then 5 and 6 will be, you guessed it, download codes. So it's kind of like what we had before, where they did Resident Evil 0 and then Resident Evil, and one of them was a download code, the other one was on the cartridge. Similar situation here. It's something that Capcom has become very comfortable with, by the way, kind of just having one game in there and then passing the download codes off and the downloads to the customer, which is pretty annoying at this point. And here's the thing. I think a lot of us realize cart costs are expensive. This is, however, a $60 release. 3 games, though. At that point, $20 a piece. I go, okay, that's actually not the worst, right? We've seen pretty bad from Capcom. That's not the worst. But we've seen companies now with CD Projekt Red jamming the entirety of The Witcher 3 onto a cartridge so you don't have to go online and download it. I think a lot of us were expecting to get The Witcher 3 on a cartridge and then have to download like 3/4 of that game, like we have to do with things like NBA 2K, by the way, that sells very well and they make a ton of money on the microtransactions, but they won't bite the bullet for preservation's sake to put it on a cartridge. What happens when that server goes down? What happens when you can't download the game anymore? Well, if you have it on your cartridge, you're good. Witcher 3 will be good pretty much going forward as long as that cartridge is still around. But Resident Evil 5 and 6, I don't know. And here's the other thing that I want to point out. Resident Evil 4 just now went physical, and they did it as a little throw-in for the physical edition for 5 and 6 coming out in North America. What's to stop them from doing something similar with 5 even? Like, maybe they have some more Resident Evil games kind of thought up and they want to bundle them in and they say, oh, physical copy of 5 right here for you guys. That's something to keep an eye on. They're definitely messing with the Switch community a bit here with some of these releases, and it's frustrating to see. I would prefer to see all 3 games on one cartridge, and I don't really want to hear that they can't do it at the $6 price when I see things like Witcher 3, for example, do just that. Now, of course, Capcom's not alone in doing these downloads, but it's still getting annoying to have these codes. I mean, we're about to have Wolfenstein come out, and it's literally just a code in the box. So, yeah, kind of frustrating, but at least I guess 4 is finally on a cartridge, but some of us have probably already bought it, so I think I would have liked to have had that before, not now, to where you'll double dip. Capcom's clever there. They're really trying to get over on the Switch customer right now. Next up, let's talk about a very odd remake. It's not really something I was expecting, or I think anyone was expecting. Super Monkey Ball. We heard about this happening. It was rated in Taiwan. We said, all right, cool, some kind of Super Monkey Ball is happening. Well, check this out. It's Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. I don't know why it's Banana Blitz. It's definitely an odd one. They could have gone back to like the GameCube days and grabbed one of those, but they decided, you know what? We're going to go get Banana Blitz, call it Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. It's going to be on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, the Switch, all of which coming out October 29th, and then the PC version will be in the winter time at some point. It's very vague. Now, this is odd because, from what I remember, this was a launch title for the Wii, like the regular Wii, back in 2006 in November, and because of that, it's very much based around motion controls. So I'm kind of wondering, okay, are they going to play around with the minigames? Are they going to change it up? Not necessarily for something like the Switch, because the Switch should be able to replicate a lot of that. I'm more or less thinking about like PC, PlayStation 4, or Xbox. I assume this game is getting changed heavily, because I remember using the Wii Remote for a lot of those games to make it work, so I'm not really sure how this is happening exactly, and I do think they could have gone and grabbed a different one rather than this one. It's not like a bad game, but the ones from the GameCube I remember were better. I don't know why they picked this one. Maybe it was just easier to port, maybe they have an idea for it, maybe they wanted to break it away from the motion controls and get it on something other than the Wii. It really is hard to say. I'm not sure. The Wii was basically a GameCube anyway, so what's the difference too much there for porting? It's going to be interesting to see. It's actually coming out October 29th, so we don't have to wait too much longer to check it out, and I'll be checking it out because I've been waiting for something Super Monkey Ball, and after hearing about the rating, I was curious, and now I'm really curious to see how they're going to change it up away from motion controls. Next up, let's talk about where all of those Xbox One Connects went. Now, if you're like me and you got the Xbox One VCR model, as I like to call it, when it first came out, you were probably stuck with a Kinect as well, and honestly, after a little while, it didn't really do much for you. Sure, it was cool at first when you would turn on the Xbox and it would recognize your face and it would sign you in, and you were like, oh, that was really cool. And then you start to realize that the Kinect knows a bit too much about you. No, it was a neat idea, but it certainly served its time, and I think a lot of us kind of moved on beyond that. Even the PlayStation camera, does anyone really even use that anymore? I think the camera age has come and gone at this point. We mostly only use it for VR now because that's just how we have tracking set up with the PlayStation VR as an example. But interesting stuff here. Check this tweet out. This one's actually from Jason Scott, who spotted Xbox One Kinects in the wild, and they're not just anywhere. They're actually in the airport for surveillance, being used by the TSA currently. And I looked at this and I said, well, that's funny because that's at least the most use I've seen out of an Xbox Kinect in a long time. The Transportation Security Administration seems to have found at least a use for them. Now, I'm not really sure the idea here. I guess they're just cameras being used to track and monitor. Again, though, they do have IR tracking, so maybe that makes it easier for them to see people around in that area. Odd stuff there. I also wonder if the TSA just bought all these Xbox One Kinects secondhand, or if they had a deal with Microsoft and Microsoft said, wow, we have a lot of Xbox One Kinects that no one is buying or using. Let's get rid of them and let's sell them off cheap to the TSA. It's funny to see that, but the next time you're in an airport, definitely look around. I'm very curious if this is a new thing and if these are just going to start popping up, or if they've been around this whole time and no one's noticed. The one thing that's interesting about that tweet is they also mentioned that the Xbox logo is still there, so they didn't even try to cover it up with tape or something. So it doesn't seem to be a big deal to Microsoft, or I guess the TSA, to have an Xbox One logo there tracking you. Definitely look around the next time you're at an airport, though. In our last bit of news, let's talk about this JoyCon drift issue that popped up yesterday. Now, the issue itself has been around for a while now, but it really blew up yesterday after Kotaku put out an article getting over 300,000 views, getting passed around like crazy, and it looks like Kotaku is starting to put a little pressure on Nintendo to give us some sort of response. And because of that article, it seemed like it was popping up everywhere. Now, we've had previous Reddit threads on the Nintendo Switch forum that says, hey, my joystick is drifting on my Joy-Con, and it pops up constantly. I'd say like every 3 days or so, I hear about this happening on Reddit, on Twitter, and other places where just it's being brought up. In fact, one on Reddit, as we talked about in a previous video, my concern about the Switch Lite, by the way, being the joystick could start drifting. And then what do? We're gonna have to open that system up, obviously, which we will. So make sure you stop by then. But you gotta replace the system otherwise. And a lot of people have fell victim to the Joy-Con drift. So when you see things like the Reddit threads blowing up to 26,000 upvotes, it does become a concern. And now it looks like everyone is really pushing right now, all at once, on Nintendo, looking for a response, with Kotaku issuing some sort of feeler out to Nintendo to try to get to the bottom of this and figure something out. And I do think at this time, with how widespread it seems to be, Nintendo probably should do some kind of response. Put something out there that says, hey, we're looking into it at least, right? We're doing something. Now, I've also taken the joystick apart, as we've seen here on this channel, and I do think it's fixable, but they have to actually put the effort in at a factory level or find someone else who can provide joysticks, different company, because as they stand now, they are flawed straight from the factory. There's not much you can do. You can spray contact cleaner in there, but that's temporary because all you're doing, again, is cleaning out the debris that piles up inside of the joystick as you use it, or you can just replace the joystick itself, but eventually you will run into that same issue because it's still the joystick. We've seen what happens with things like Microsoft and their Xbox 360 with the red ring after they were pushed into it, eventually started replacing them. Should Nintendo start replacing Joy-Con controllers that are drifting? Yeah, probably. If they're in the warranty period, absolutely, they should. And I think that should be something that should be basically no questions asked. If your Joy-Con is drifting, send it in. We'll send it back with a replacement one, and then they'll have a Joy-Con that they can fix or do something else with. But we'll see. I'm definitely going to be following this, and I'll keep you guys up to date if we get any type of response from Nintendo, especially if it affects you to where you can get a new Joy-Con as long as it's under warranty. And we'll finish up with our comment of the day today, as you're seeing here. This one's from from Bubble saying GameStop should run an ad campaign preaching why physical games are better than digital. You know what? GameStop should also rework, as you're saying here, their ad campaign. And I think they should try to be a bit more like humorous, try to be funny about things, you know, poke fun at the different companies that they're selling games for, because to be honest, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, they don't really like GameStop that much because GameStop's selling used games that cuts into Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft's profit margins. Even companies like Ubisoft or EA, they don't like them either. That's why you saw those little things pop up that were in your case that were like, oh, use this code and you get some sort of day one thing, and it's only for new games that it works. We've seen that. Otherwise, you got to buy it for $10. Remember that? That kind of disappeared recently, but you can tell they don't like GameStop. And it's funny because GameStop has to sell the systems, the hardware for those companies, and of course at times their games. So yeah, I think GameStop should absolutely take some shots at digital media, absolutely show, you know, some crazy things happening. Oh, this game's 400 gigabytes, it's gonna take you this long to download it. They even have that little filter that like makes you look old, so they could have the person downloading and then come back and then they're old or something, you know, in front of their TV. Just some ideas, and I think that is a great way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is Capcom pulling a fast one with Resident Evil 4, originally selling it digitally $30, now all of a sudden it's part of a set physically, and technically it works out to being about $20. What do you think about that one? I'm very curious. Also, what do you think about this whole drifting issue with the Joy-Cons and this big push right now towards Nintendo to get a response? I mean, you might as well message them on Twitter respectfully and start asking about it, or I guess technically you can go in their customer support and send a message in there as well. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.